Hey guys, how y'all doing and welcome back. Once again, before I start, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you that have been showing so much great support in my previous videos. So today's gospel is a continuation of last week's gospel, the feeding of the 5,000. So what happens is after Jesus does the preaching and the miracles, he goes up by himself away somewhere by himself and prays, and then goes down and meets his disciples. And when he meets his disciples, the weather was very stormy, and the sea was really rough. So what happens is Jesus starts to walk towards them. And then the disciples see this and react how all of us would react. We were terrified, they were scared and thought he was a ghost. And then Jesus calmed them down and said, it's me, don't be afraid, I'm Jesus. And then he walks towards them. And then Peter sees that and says, okay, Lord, if it's you, then call me, tell me to come to you. And then Peter, with great courage, jumps out of the boat and starts walking on the water towards Jesus. And so I want to focus on this specific response to what Peter did. And so what Peter does is, of course, something with great courage, but not all of us would react in the same way that Peter did. So if I was Peter, I would have been so scared to actually just jump out of the boat and walk on water. I would have been hesitant. And so, putting us in Peter's position, we could have reacted in three different ways. Firstly, we could have reacted exactly like how Peter did and take great courage and just jump over the boat and walk to Jesus. Or what we could have done is just been like, hold on, this is way too risky. I am not going to jump out of this boat. I'm going to stay in this boat and I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be in my comfort zone. And I spoke about comfort zone in one of my previous videos. And I said how, all of us like to be comfortable, and we don't want to go out of, our safe environment. So we could have been like that. And thirdly, we could have been 50-50 in a sense. We'd be like, okay, and I want to be safe, but I also want to go to Jesus. So we reacted to the call of Jesus in three different ways. As Christians, Jesus has given us the freedom to respond to his call in three different ways. Like I mentioned, we could easily just be like Peter, jump off the boat and go towards him. Secondly, we could just reject him and just say, I'm in my comfort zone. I want to be where I am here. Or thirdly, we can just say, okay, hold on, part of me wants to be comfortable and I don't want to face the harsh realities that we Christians can face. And at the same time, we say to ourselves, hold on, I also want to be with Jesus. I want to live my life with Jesus. So we are sort of, I guess you can say, quite undecisive in what we want to do. Peter shows a great example of how we should follow Jesus. We must take courage, risk our lives to go towards Jesus. But Peter then gets into a dilemma. When he starts walking towards Jesus on the water, he starts to sink. So why does Peter start to sink? Well, he starts to sink because he realizes the environment he's in is very stormy and that he could potentially sink. So what happens is that his attention to Jesus starts to divert, and he thinks about himself, and he thinks about, the risk that he's taken himself without the goal that's right in front of him. So what can we take from this? Like Peter, sometimes we can also be distracted from what's around us, from the environments that we are in, and that we start to lose our focus on Jesus. We stop tuning into his voice, stop tuning into his presence, and we start to think more about ourselves. Rather than him, it becomes all about it becomes all about us. So if we don't get into the regular habit of tuning into God's voice, like Peter, we will also start to sink in our problems, in the environments, in the distractions that we are facing. And so what I also want to share with you guys is how, when I feel like I'm thinking, how I tune into God's voice. So what I do is firstly go into the scriptures, and I want to share with you guys a story that happened in my life. So one day, this was during A-level seasons. This was coming towards the end of A-levels, and my friends were all telling me that I'm going to do this when I go out of college. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to uni. I'm going to do this. And for me, it was like they had their life figured out. They knew what they were going to do with their lives. But I wasn't like that. I was so undecisive. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so obviously, it made me feel quite upset when everyone around me had their lives figured out and I was the only one that didn't know what direction my life was going in. So what I decided to do is then just take this issue into prayer, because I felt that at that moment only Jesus could actually just give that comfort that I needed. So after school I finished, I went home, went into my room, and I just knelt down and just begged the Lord. I took my Bible and I just begged the Lord to just speak to me, just to give me some comfort. That's all I needed at that moment. So what I did is I got my Bible and I just opened my Bible like that. And the verse that I got was Jeremiah 29 verse 11, where it says, "For I know the plans I have in mind for you, that you have a future that's full of hope." And when I read this word of God, that fear that I had, that fear of uncertainty that I was having in me had completely disappeared, because I knew that I knew that Jesus had a plan for me and that he had a bright future for me. So I wasn't scared anymore. And so that's an example of how tuning into God's voice can take you out of that moment of feeling scared and anxious and give you comfort. And like Peter, when Peter started sinking, Jesus took Peter's hand and pulled him out. And for me, if at that moment it felt like Jesus was doing the exact same. When I felt like I was sinking, Jesus just gave his hand to me and pulled me out. And I just felt so free after that. So that's one way, reading the scriptures. Another way that helps me tune into God's voice for me is listening to preachers, listening to people spread the gospel, sharing the gospel. That for me is so important, because sometimes Jesus works in mysterious ways through just the preaching that you watch on YouTube, or just someone sharing spiritual matters. At that moment, Jesus can speak to that person, can speak through that person to you. And many times in my life, when I watch someone preach, it hits me so hard, and it completely changes my mindset at times. So that was something that I found extremely helpful. And another way, and the final way in which I find helpful for me to tune into God's voice, is just spending that time in silence in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Because at that moment, it's not you, the world, and Jesus, but it's just you and Jesus at that moment, face to face. And that there is no beautiful moment than that. And there is no greater moment in man's life than to be able to spend time in front of Jesus, face to face, the God of all creation, and share your life with him, share your problems, unload your burdens, your problems to him. And that truly, for me, sets me free so much. And that's something that I want to encourage you guys to do as well, is when the chaos starts to hit us like a storm, just spend that time in front of Jesus and just say, "Lord, here I am, Lord. It is I, and I come towards you, Lord, and I just give it all to you." And in response to that, Jesus takes your problem and he gives you that peace. In that storm that you're facing, he gives you that peace back. That's all for today, guys. Thank you once again for listening and tuning in, and I hope you have a great day. God bless.